The story behind it's actually quite sad. You know, I've done some pretty silly things over the course of my life, and I've been incredibly fortunate to have gotten away with them to get to this point in my life, and certainly have learned a lot over the years. But I've had some friends that were doing very similar things, and specifically one that just didn't make it, just didn't survive, and it was a song that I wrote about the loss of that person and kind of the stupidity of going that way. Visually, it was a reaction to the song. I think the song is a very old style country song, and there's a loneliness to that that lent itself to the song as well, and so the visual I just wanted to try and match the sentiment of the song, and that look felt right. I'd been there before as an audience person. To have the honor of being invited to play there was certainly one of, and I've had some great highlights in my life, but that was certainly one of them. Being able to play with that house band and with my band was an absolute honor and a privilege. And the one thing that I took away, because the show itself is kind of a blur that happens very fast, uh, but it was amazing to me how supportive all of the other bands and acts were. Uh, and not just to me, but there was a community there. And there was this real sense that everybody was pulling for everybody to do really well and have a great time. And that sense of community among artists, I think, unfortunately, uh, is not as prevalent as maybe when I started 30 years ago. And so it was so refreshing uh, to be backstage and feel that and sense that uh, that sense of family that the Grand Ole Opry is famous for. The common denominator between certainly my music uh, and acting is the desire to tell a story. That's the one thing I've loved doing as an actor for 30 years. It's the thing I'm enjoying and loving the most about uh, playing music. Uh, and for me, I'd have to go back to the writers like Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard, Chris Christopherson. All of those guys, not only did they write about kind of the darker aspects of life, but they did it with a kind of honesty and dignity that was so important. And they all wrote in the first person narrative. Johnny Cash, for instance, did not go to Reno and shoot a man to watch him die, but he took on that character. Uh, well, that is so close to what I would do as an actor uh, that the kind of move or the desire to tell a story musically in that way was a wasn't a complicated kind of thing for me, and so I've always loved country music for that. That they were the great storytellers, and they were the great American storytellers, and that was something I wanted to be a part of and try. It's easier for me to say I'm fans of certain people than to say I want to write with that, because I think that's, wow, aren't you important? But no, I mean, there are artists that I am a huge fan of. One record that I just have been listening to all year has been Chris Stapleton's record, along with everybody else. And but I just think he's an extraordinary writer. Uh, but there's so many talented people. I mean, here in Nashville, you walk down the street and you run into 10 amazing writers and players, and uh, so you never know what'll happen. The premise is a reality. There is an article in the Constitution that dictates that whenever there's a State of the Union, that there has to be what is called a designated survivor. Uh, so in case, and I think back in the day, they were worried about a loyalist, blocking the doors and setting the Capitol building on fire because it was all wood. Uh, so that if something like that were to happen, or a natural disaster, that there would be one member of the cabinet that would be able to fulfill the line of succession to the presidency. Uh, I play a character that is that person from the cabinet. The president is not happy with him, and so he is given the kind of not pleasant duty of being the designated survivor. He's not invited to the party. And a terrible event takes place, and my character becomes president of the United States overnight. Country music fans are the most loyal fans to the artists that they like, more than any other specific genre. And I think that's one of the reasons when you see the massive shift in the music industry over the last 15 years, it hasn't affected country music because that fan base is loyal. And again, I think it's a real tribute to the storytelling. The thing that I experienced on tour that was really the most pleasant thing for me was that by virtue of the stories at the end of the show, I think myself and the audience both realized we're not that different. The human experience is tough, and we're all going through it. And these songs help us realize that we've got a lot of common ground here. Uh, and I think that that's ultimately why probably country fans are as loyal as they are. The Ryman is obviously such a beautiful place, and and I like just going into some of the honky tonks and just again the level of music is at such a high standard here that you can walk into any bar and see just an amazing band or another artist uh, that's going to move you, and that I've enjoyed immensely.